Long before the great flood covered the earth, there lived a man who walked so closely with God that heaven itself opened its secrets to him. His name was Enoch, and his story reveals one of the most shocking events in human history, the rebellion of angels and the corruption they brought to mankind. This is not just ancient history, it's the account of how evil first entered our world in ways that changed everything forever. What you're about to discover will explain the origins of violence, wickedness, and the supernatural forces that have influenced humanity since the beginning. In the seventh generation from Adam, a remarkable man was born. As Genesis 5:21-24 tells us, Enoch lived 65 years and begot Methuselah. After he begot Methuselah, Enoch walked with God 300 years and had sons and daughters. So all the days of Enoch were 365 years, and Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. This simple description hides an extraordinary truth. While other men lived and died, Enoch found favor with the Creator in a way that set him apart from everyone else. His life was different, marked by righteousness when the world around him grew increasingly dark. The book of Enoch, chapter 1, verse 2, describes how Enoch received his calling. The words of the blessing of Enoch, wherewith he blessed the elect and righteous, who will be living in the day of tribulation, when all the wicked and godless are to be removed. God chose this faithful man to become his messenger, not just to his own generation, but to all who would come after. Enoch's reputation for justice spread throughout the earth. People knew him as a man who spoke truth and lived by God's laws. But his calling went far beyond being a good example. The Almighty was preparing him for something unprecedented, to become a witness to events happening in the heavenly realm that would change the course of human history. As chapter 12, verse 3 of Enoch records, "Before these things Enoch was hidden, and no one of the children of men knew where he was hidden, and where he abode, and what had become of him." God was preparing his chosen scribe for revelations that no human eye had ever seen. High above the earth, in the heavenly realm, a conspiracy was forming. 200 angels, who had been given the task of watching over mankind, began to look upon the daughters of men with forbidden desire. These were no ordinary angels. They were called watchers, powerful beings assigned by God to observe and guard humanity. The book of Enoch, chapter 6, verses 1-2, reveals their plot. "And it came to pass, when the children of men had multiplied, that in those days were born unto them beautiful and comely daughters. And the angels, the children of the heaven, saw and lusted after them, and said to one another, Come, let us choose us wives from among the children of men, and beget us children. The leader of this rebellion was Semjaza, whose very name would become synonymous with defiance against God. But he wasn't alone. Other powerful angels joined him: Azazel, who would teach warfare; Barakijal, master of the stars; Kokabel, who knew the secrets of constellations; and Ezekiel, controller of the clouds. These weren't random acts of rebellion. Chapter 6, verse 3 shows their calculated planning. And Semjaza, who was their leader, said unto them, I fear ye will not indeed agree to do this deed, and I alone shall have to pay the penalty of a great sin. Even in his rebellion, Semjaza understood the gravity of what they were planning, but the other angels were determined. Verse 4 continues, And they all answered him and said, Let us all swear an oath, and all bind ourselves by mutual imprecations, not to abandon this plan, but to do this thing. They made a pact that would seal their doom and bring catastrophe to the earth. From Mount Hermon, the place whose name means devoted to destruction, these 200 angels descended. They had chosen their landing spot with purpose. This mountain would become ground zero for the corruption of humanity. Their oath bound them together in rebellion, and there would be no turning back. What happened next violated every law of heaven and earth. The Watchers took human women as wives, crossing a boundary that God had never intended to be crossed. These weren't relationships based on love or companionship. They were unions that would produce offspring unlike anything the world had ever seen. Chapter 7, verse 1 of Enoch describes the result. And all the others together with them took unto themselves wives, and each chose for himself one, and they began to go in unto them, and to defile themselves with them. And they taught them charms and enchantments, and the cutting of roots, and made them acquainted with plants. The children born from these forbidden unions were giants, the Nephilim. Genesis 6:4 confirms their existence. There were giants on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. Those were the mighty men who were of old, men of renown. But the book of Enoch gives us the shocking details that Genesis only hints at. Chapter 7, verse 2 reveals their immense size. And the women became pregnant, and they bare great giants, whose height was 3,000 ells. An ell was about 18 inches, making these creatures over 4,000 feet tall, truly monstrous beings that dominated the landscape. These giants weren't content to live peacefully among humans. Verse 3 continues, who consumed all the acquisitions of men, and when men could no longer sustain them, the giants turned against them and devoured mankind. The Nephilim became predators, hunting humans for food when regular provisions couldn't satisfy their enormous appetites. Violence spread across the earth like a plague. Verse 4 shows how bad things became, and they began to sin against birds and beasts and reptiles and fish, and to devour one another's flesh and drink the blood. The natural order that God had established was being torn apart by these hybrid creatures. The corruption wasn't limited to the giants themselves. Their very presence changed everything around them, introducing levels of wickedness and violence that humanity had never experienced. The earth itself began to groan under the weight of such evil. The fallen angels didn't stop at producing giant offspring. They began teaching humanity secrets that were meant to remain hidden. This wasn't education. It was the deliberate corruption of human knowledge for destructive purposes. Azazel became the first weapons instructor in human history. Chapter 8, verse 1 of Enoch tells us, and Azazel taught men to make swords, and knives, and shields, and breastplates, and made known to them the metals of the earth, and the art of working them, and bracelets, and ornaments, and the use of antimony, and the beautifying of the eyelids, and all kinds of costly stones, and all coloring tinctures. This wasn't just about making tools. Azazel was teaching warfare and vanity. He showed humans how to kill each other more effectively and how to focus on outward appearance rather than inner character. Both lessons would poison human society for generations to come. Zemjaza had his own curriculum of corruption. Verse 3 reveals, and there arose much godlessness, and they committed fornication, and they were led astray, and became corrupt in all their ways. Zemjaza taught enchantments and root cuttings. Armaros, the resolving of enchantments. Barakijal taught astrology. Kokabel, the constellations. Ezekiel, the knowledge of the clouds. Arakiel, the signs of the earth. Shamsil, the signs of the sun. And Sariel, the course of the moon. Each angel contributed to humanity's downfall in specific ways. They weren't sharing wisdom, they were providing tools for manipulation, fortune-telling, and attempts to control natural forces. Humans began to trust in magic and astrology rather than in God. The knowledge of astronomy became twisted into occult practices. Instead of marveling at God's creation, people began to worship the stars and planets themselves. The signs in the sky became tools for predicting the future rather than displays of divine glory. Weather patterns, which God controlled, became subjects for human manipulation through the forbidden knowledge these angels provided. Clouds, sun, and moon were no longer seen as expressions of God's sovereignty, but as forces humans could potentially control through secret knowledge. The earth itself began to rebel against the corruption that had been introduced. What God had created in perfect harmony was now in chaos, and the very ground cried out against the injustice being committed upon it. Chapter 8, Verse 4 of Enoch reveals the extent of the devastation, and men being destroyed cried, and their cry went up to heaven. This wasn't just physical destruction, it was the breakdown of everything that made human society function properly. The violence wasn't random or occasional. Chapter 9, verse 1 shows how systematic it had become. And then Michael, Uriel, Raphael, and Gabriel looked down from heaven and saw much blood being shed upon the earth, and all lawlessness being wrought upon the earth. The archangels themselves were witnessing unprecedented levels of bloodshed. Animals, which had lived in relative peace with humans since creation, were now being corrupted and destroyed. The giants hunted them for sport and food, while the forbidden knowledge taught humans to exploit them in new and harmful ways. The careful balance of nature that God had established was collapsing. Even the plants and trees were affected. The knowledge of roots and herbs, which could have been used for healing, was being twisted for poisons and harmful potions. Nothing in creation remained untouched by the spreading corruption. The very fabric of reality seemed to be unraveling. Chapter 9, verse 2 continues, "And they said to one another, the earth made without inhabitant cries, the voice of their crying, up to the gates of heaven." The planet itself was groaning under the weight of so much evil. Blood soaked the ground, in amounts never seen before or since. Every day brought new acts of violence as the giants and corrupted humans competed to see who could commit the most terrible acts. The earth was becoming unrecognizable from the paradise God had originally created. In heaven, the four great archangels could no longer remain silent observers. Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel, the most powerful beings in God's army, came before the throne with a desperate plea for intervention. Chapter 9, verse 3 of Enoch records their words. "And now to you, the holy ones of heaven, the souls of men make their suit, saying, 'Bring our cause before the Most High.'" They weren't just reporting what they saw. They were carrying the cries of dying humanity directly to God Himself. Their report was detailed and urgent. Verse 6 shows their concern. "And you have seen what Azazel hath done, who hath taught all unrighteousness on earth, and revealed the eternal secrets which were preserved in heaven, which men were striving to learn." The angels understood that forbidden knowledge was being shared. The archangels weren't asking for permission to act. They were presenting evidence for divine judgment. Verse 7 continues, "And Semjaza, to whom you have given authority to bear, rule over his associates, and they have gone to the daughters of men upon the earth, and have slept with the women, and have defiled themselves, and revealed to them all kinds of sins." Michael stepped forward as the chief prosecutor. Verse 8 records his specific accusations, "And the women have borne giants, and the whole earth has thereby been filled with blood and unrighteousness." The case was clear. The watchers had corrupted everything they touched. Gabriel added his testimony about the giants themselves. Verse 9 states, "And now, behold, the souls of those who have died are crying and making their suit to the gates of heaven, and their lamentations have ascended, and cannot cease because of the lawless deeds which are wrought on the earth." The archangels knew that without divine intervention, humanity would destroy itself completely. The corruption had spread too far and grown too powerful for any earthly force to stop it. Only God Himself could cleanse the earth of what had been unleashed. Their plea reached the throne room of the Almighty, and the response would shake both heaven and earth. While the archangels presented their case in heaven, God was preparing His chosen messenger on earth. Enoch, who had lived righteously among increasingly wicked people, was about to receive the most extraordinary revelation in human history. Chapter 14, verse 1 of Enoch describes the beginning. "And observe ye everything that takes place in the heaven, that they do not change their orbits, and the luminaries which are in the heaven, that they do not alter their orbits. God was showing Enoch that while earthly things had fallen into chaos, heavenly order remained perfect. But this was just the preparation. Verse 8 reveals what happened next. And the vision was shown to me thus. Behold, in the vision clouds invited me, and a mist summoned me, and the course of the stars and the lightning sped and hastened me. And the winds in the vision caused me to fly and lifted me upward and bore me into heaven. Enoch found himself transported beyond the physical world into the very presence of God. This wasn't a dream or imagination. It was a supernatural journey that few humans would ever experience. Chapter 14, verse 9 continues, And I went in till I drew nigh to a wall, which is built of crystals and surrounded by tongues of fire, and it began to affright me. The sights that greeted Enoch were beyond human description. Verse 10 shows his amazement. And I went into the tongues of fire, and drew nigh to a large house, which was built of crystals. And the walls of the house were like a tessellated floor made of crystals, and its groundwork was of crystal. Standing in the presence of divine glory, Enoch received his commission. Chapter 15, verse 1 records God's words to him. And he answered and said to me, and I heard his voice, Fear not, Enoch, thou righteous man and scribe of righteousness. Approach hither and hear my voice. God had chosen Enoch not just to witness these events, but to record them for future generations. Verse 2 continues, And go, say to the watchers of heaven, who have sent thee to intercede for them, you should intercede for men, and not men for you. Enoch was being sent as a messenger, but not with good news for the fallen angels. The weight of this responsibility was enormous. Enoch understood that he was about to carry God's judgment to beings far more powerful than any human. But his faithfulness had prepared him for this moment, and he wouldn't fail in his mission. The message Enoch carried from God's throne was one of absolute judgment. There would be no mercy for the watchers who had corrupted the earth, no second chances for those who had violated heaven's most sacred laws. Chapter 15, verse 3 of Enoch contains God's condemnation. Wherefore have ye left the high, holy, and eternal heaven, and lain with women, and defiled yourselves with the daughters of men, and taken to yourselves wives, and done like the children of earth, and begotten giants as your sons? The crime was clear. The angels had abandoned their heavenly calling to satisfy earthly lusts. Verse 4 shows God's disgust. And though ye were holy, spiritual, living the eternal life, you have defiled yourselves with the blood of women, and have begotten children with the blood of flesh, and as the children of men have lusted after flesh and blood, as those also do who die and perish. The sentence was equally clear. Chapter 16, verse 1 declares, From the days of the slaughter and destruction and death of the giants, from the souls of whose flesh the spirits, having gone forth, shall destroy without incurring judgment, thus shall they destroy until the day of the consummation, the great judgment in which the age shall be consummated over the watchers and the godless, yea, shall be wholly consummated. The fallen angels would be bound in darkness until the final judgment. Chapter 10, verse 4 shows their immediate fate. And again the Lord said to Raphael, Bind Azazel hand and foot, and cast him into the darkness, and make an opening in the desert which is in Dudael, and cast him therein. But the judgment extended beyond the angels themselves. Verse 9 addresses the giants. And to Gabriel said the Lord, Proceed against the bastards and the reprobates, and against the children of fornication, and destroy the children of the watchers from amongst men, and cause them to go forth. Send them one against the other, that they may destroy each other in battle. The earth itself would be cleansed through a great flood. Chapter 10, verse 1 had already revealed this plan. Then said the Most High, the Holy and Great One, spake, and sent Uriel to the son of Lamech, and said to him, Go to Noah, and tell him in my name, hide thyself, and reveal to him the end that is approaching. The corruption that had spread across the earth would be washed away, and humanity would have a fresh start through Noah and his family. The age of the giants was ending, and God's justice would be complete. After delivering God's judgment to the fallen watchers, Enoch's extraordinary journey was far from over. The Almighty had more to reveal to his faithful servant, secrets about the structure of creation itself that no human had ever seen. Chapter 17, verse 1 of Enoch describes what happened next. And they took and brought me to a place in which those who were there were like flaming fire, and when they wished, they appeared as men. Enoch found himself transported through multiple levels of heaven, each more glorious than the last. The journey upward revealed wonders beyond imagination. Verse 2 continues, And they brought me to the place of darkness, and to a mountain, the point of whose summit reached to heaven. This wasn't just physical travel. Enoch was being shown the very foundations of reality itself. As he ascended through the seven heavens, each level revealed new hierarchies of angels and different aspects of God's glory. Chapter 17, verse 3, shows the scope of what he witnessed. And I saw the places of the luminaries and the treasuries of the stars and of the thunder, and in the uttermost depths, where were a fiery bow and arrows and their quiver, and a fiery sword and all the lightnings. The angels who guided Enoch weren't just showing him sights, they were explaining the divine order that governed everything. These weren't random visions, but systematic revelations of how God had organized his creation from the smallest detail to the grandest cosmic movements. In the highest heaven, Enoch came before the throne of the Almighty himself. The experience was so overwhelming that human language could barely describe it, yet God commissioned him to understand and record these mysteries so that future generations could comprehend the magnificent order behind all existence. The angels explained that everything in creation had its proper place and function. Unlike the chaos the Watchers had brought to earth, heaven operated in perfect harmony according to divine law. This was the standard by which all things would ultimately be judged. God began revealing to Enoch the hidden workings of the natural world, knowledge that would help him understand how the Creator maintained order throughout his creation. Chapter 18, verse 1 shows the beginning of these revelations. And I saw the treasuries of all the winds. I saw how he had furnished with them the whole creation and the firm foundations of the earth. Enoch learned that what seemed like random weather patterns were actually part of a carefully designed system. The winds weren't just moving air, they were divine instruments with specific purposes. Verse 2 continues, And I saw the cornerstone of the earth. I saw the four winds which bear the earth and the firmament of the heaven. Each wind had its assigned direction and duty in maintaining the balance of creation. Fire revealed its own secrets to Enoch. Chapter 18, verse 3 describes what he learned. And I saw how the winds stretch out the vaults of heaven and have their station between heaven and earth. These are the pillars of the heaven. The elements weren't independent forces, but worked together under divine control. Water, too, had its appointed place and function. The seas and rivers followed courses that God had established, and even the rain fell according to his commands. Nothing about the natural world was left to chance or operated independently of divine will. Chapter 19, verse 1 reveals more. And Uriel said to me, Here shall stand the angels who have connected themselves with women, and their spirits assuming many different forms are defiling mankind, and shall lead them astray into sacrificing to demons as gods. Even in explaining natural forces, the angels reminded Enoch of the contrast between divine order and demonic corruption. The elements themselves testified to God's power and wisdom. Unlike the chaotic destruction caused by the fallen angels, the proper functioning of wind, fire, and water demonstrated how creation was meant to operate, in perfect submission to its Creator's will. Each element had been given boundaries and laws that it could not violate. This cosmic obedience stood in stark contrast to the rebellion of the Watchers, showing Enoch the beauty of creation when it functioned according to divine design. One of the most important revelations Enoch received concerned time itself, how God had organized days, months, and years according to a perfect heavenly pattern that humans were meant to follow. Chapter 72, verse 1, begins this crucial teaching. The book of the courses of the luminaries of the heaven, the relations of each according to their classes, their dominion and their seasons according to their names and places of origin, and according to their months, which Uriel, the holy angel who was with me, who is their guide, showed me. The sun, Enoch learned, followed a precise path through the heavens. Verse 3 explains, "And on the first day she rises in the first portal in the east in the heaven, and remains in that portal 30 days. This wasn't random movement, but carefully planned divine choreography. The solar year contained exactly 364 days, divided into 4 equal seasons of 91 days each. Chapter 72, verse 32 confirms this. And the sun completes all his course in 364 days. This was the calendar God intended for his people to follow, but humans had corrupted even the keeping of time. Chapter 80, verse 2 warns, "And many chiefs of the stars shall transgress the order prescribed, and these shall alter their orbits and tasks, and not appear at the seasons prescribed to them." People were following false calendars that ignored God's design. The moon had its own appointed course, different from the sun's. Chapter 73, verse 1 describes its pattern. "And after this law I saw another law dealing with the smaller luminary, which is named the moon. The lunar months were shorter and served different purposes than the solar year. Enoch learned that following the wrong calendar wasn't just a minor error. It was rebellion against God's established order." Chapter 80, verse 6 shows the consequences. "And the whole order of the stars shall be concealed from the sinners, and the thoughts of those on the earth shall err concerning them, and they shall be altered from all their ways." The angels emphasized that timekeeping was a matter of worship. Following God's calendar meant acknowledging his sovereignty over time itself, while following human-invented calendars was a form of idolatry that put human wisdom above divine. Revelation.Enoch's journey revealed not just the heavenly realms, but also the hidden places where spirits dwelt and where God's justice was being carried out in ways invisible to normal human sight. Chapter 22, verse 1 describes one of these mysterious locations. "And thence I went to another place, and the mountain and the summit of the mountain were of hard rock, and 4 hollow places were therein, deep and wide and very smooth." These weren't earthly landmarks, but spiritual realities. The angel accompanying Enoch explained the purpose of these places. Verse 3 reveals, "These hollow places have been created for this very purpose, that the spirits of the souls of the dead should assemble therein, yea, that all the souls of the children of men should assemble here." This was where human spirits went after death, but not all spirits went to the same place. Verse 9 shows the division. "These 3 have been separated in order that the spirits of the righteous might be separated from the spirits of the sinners, that those who make lamentation may be separated from those who watch for their destruction." Even in death, God's justice continued. Enoch saw the location of Eden itself, the original paradise that God had prepared for humanity. Chapter 24, verse 1 describes it. "And from thence I went to another place of the earth, and he showed me a mountain range of fire which burnt day and night." The garden wasn't destroyed but remained under divine protection. In the center of Eden stood the tree of life, which Enoch describes in chapter 24, verse 4. And amongst them was a tree such as I had never yet smelt, neither was any amongst them, nor were others like it. It had a fragrance beyond all fragrance, and its leaves and blooms and wood wither not forever. And its fruit is beautiful, and its fruit and resembles the dates of a palm. The geography of the spiritual world followed, the same divine order as everything else in creation. Chapter 25, verse 3 explains the tree's future purpose, and this tree is for the elect, for unto them is given its fruit for life, that they may plant it in the holy place, in the sanctuary of the Lord, the eternal King. Paradise would be restored. For the righteous, these hidden places weren't random locations, but carefully designed spaces where God's eternal purposes were being worked out. The spiritual geography reflected the same attention to order and purpose that characterized all of divine creation. Through his supernatural journey, Enoch learned what happened to human spirits after death, knowledge that revealed God's perfect justice and mercy working even beyond the grave. Chapter 22, verse 4, shows the first division. Here their spirits shall be set apart in this great pain, till the great day of judgment and punishment and torment of those who curse continually, and revenge on the spirits of those who take revenge. Death wasn't the end, but a transition to accountability. The righteous dead had a completely different experience. Verse 9 describes their state, and he answered me, saying, This first is for the spirits of the righteous, in which there is the bright spring of water, and they who have been murdered cry for vengeance until it is executed for them. Even in death, God heard their cries for justice, but there was a middle category as well. Verse 10 reveals, And this second is for the spirits of the children of men, who were not righteous, but sinners, who were complete in transgression. And of the transgressors they shall be companions, but their spirits shall not be slain in the day of judgment, nor shall they be raised from thence. These spirits faced a different kind of judgment. The resurrection wasn't the same for everyone. Chapter 51, verse 1 explains, And in those days shall the earth also give back that which has been entrusted to it, and Sheol also shall give back that which it has received, and hell shall give back that which it owes. Different places of the dead would surrender their inhabitants. For the righteous, resurrection meant transformation and eternal life. Verse 4 continues, And the elect shall begin to dwell with the elect, and those are the measures which shall be given to faith, and which shall strengthen righteousness. Their destiny was glorious beyond imagination. The wicked faced a very different resurrection. Chapter 51, verse 5 shows their fate. And in those days the mountains shall leap like rams, and the hills shall skip like lambs, satisfied with milk. And the faces of all the angels in heaven shall be lighted up with joy. Creation itself would rejoice at God's final justice. Enoch learned that every human choice in life had eternal consequences. The spirits of the dead were already experiencing the beginning of their eternal destinies, waiting for the final resurrection when God's justice would be completely revealed to all creation. In his journey through the heavens, Enoch encountered beings of incredible power and beauty whose sole purpose was to worship and serve the Creator. These weren't the rebellious watchers, but faithful angels who had never fallen from their divine calling. Chapter 20, verse 1 introduces some of these mighty beings, and these are the names of the holy angels who watch. Uriel, one of the holy angels, who is over the world and over Tartarus. Raphael, one of the holy angels, who takes vengeance on the world of the luminaries. Each had specific responsibilities in God's cosmic government. The list continues with their various duties. Verse 2 adds, Raguel, one of the holy angels, who takes vengeance on the world of the luminaries. Michael, one of the holy angels, to wit, he that is set over the best part of mankind and over chaos. Zarachiel, one of the holy angels who is set over the spirits who sin in the spirit. These weren't just names, but offices in the heavenly administration. Chapter 20, verse 3, completes the primary 7. Gabriel, one of the holy angels who is over paradise and the serpents and the cherubim. Remiel, one of the holy angels whom God set over those who rise. Each archangel governed specific aspects of creation. Beyond the archangels were countless other beings. Chapter 71, verse 7, describes what Enoch saw. And round about were seraphim, cherubim, and Ophanim, and these are they who sleep not and guard the throne of his glory. These creatures existed solely to worship God without ceasing. The cherubim and seraphim weren't distant from God's throne, but surrounded it constantly. Verse 8 continues, "And I saw angels who could not be counted, 1,000 thousands and 10,000 times 10,000 encircling that house." The number of worshipping beings was beyond human calculation. Each type of heavenly creature had its own form of worship and service. Some sang praises, others carried out God's commands throughout creation, and still others served as guardians of divine mysteries that weren't yet ready to be revealed. Unlike the watchers who had abandoned their posts, these faithful angels never wavered in their devotion. They demonstrated what creation looked like when it operated according to divine design, in perfect harmony, order, and worship of the Creator. Through divine revelation, Enoch gained understanding of how God had constructed the universe, knowledge that revealed both the power and wisdom behind everything that existed. Chapter 18, verse 2 shows part of this cosmic architecture. "And I saw the cornerstone of the earth. I saw the 4 winds which bear the earth and the firmament of the heaven." The world wasn't floating randomly in space, but rested on foundations that God himself had established. The stars weren't just points of light, but had specific purposes and destinations. Chapter 18, verse 14 explains, "And the stars of the heaven, which have transgressed the commandment of the Lord, shall be bound until 10,000 years. The time entailed by their sins are consummated." Even celestial bodies were subject to divine law. Enoch learned about the chambers where various natural phenomena were stored. Chapter 41, verse 4, describes some of these treasuries. "And I saw the chambers of the sun and moon, whither they go, and whence they return, and their glorious return, and how one is superior to the other." Nothing happened by accident in God's creation. The very pillars of heaven were revealed to have specific locations and purposes. Chapter 18, verse 3 shows their function. "And I saw how the winds stretch out the vaults of heaven, and have their station between heaven and earth. These are the pillars of the heaven." The structure of reality itself followed divine blueprint. Water had its own appointed boundaries and sources. The seas, rivers, and even underground springs all operated according to laws that God had established at creation. Nothing flowed where it wasn't supposed to go. Mountains and valleys weren't random geological formations, but had been placed exactly where God wanted them. Each geographic feature served a purpose in the overall design of creation, from providing boundaries between nations to storing precious metals and stones. The entire universe operated like a perfectly designed machine, with every part working in harmony with every other part. This cosmic order stood in stark contrast to the chaos that the fallen angels had introduced to earth through their rebellion and corruption. As Enoch's heavenly journey neared its climax, God revealed to him what would soon happen on earth, events that would cleanse the world and prepare it for a new beginning under divine rule. Chapter 10, verse 1 contains the first prophecy. "Then said the Most High, the Holy and Great One, spake, and sent Uriel to the son of Lamech, and said to him, Go to Noah and tell him in my name, hide thyself, and reveal to him the end that is approaching, that the whole earth will be destroyed. The flood was coming to wash away all corruption, but this destruction wouldn't be random or complete. Verse 2 shows God's mercy, and tell him that he shall escape and his seed shall be preserved for all the generations of the world. Through Noah's family, humanity would have a fresh start after the judgment. The giants who had terrorized the earth would destroy each other before the flood came. Chapter 10 verse 9 reveals this strategy, and cause them to go forth, send them one against the other, that they may destroy each other in battle, for length of days shall they not have. God would use their own violence against them. The fallen angels themselves would face immediate judgment. Verse 4 describes Azazel's fate. Bind Azazel hand and foot, and cast him into the darkness, and make an opening in the desert, which is in Dudael, and cast him therein. The leader of corruption would be imprisoned until the final judgment. After the flood, the earth would be renewed and productive again. Chapter 10, verse 18 promises, and destroy all the spirits of the reprobate and the children of the watchers, because they have wronged mankind. Destroy all wrong from the face of the earth, and let every evil work come to an end. Evil would be purged from creation. The survivors would multiply and fill the earth with righteousness instead of violence. Verse 22 shows the coming blessing. And all the children of men shall become righteous, and all nations shall offer adoration, and shall praise me, and all shall worship me. A new age of worship would begin. This wasn't just punishment, but renovation. God was preparing to restore his creation to something closer to its original design, free from the corruption that the Watchers had introduced through their rebellion and forbidden teachings. After revealing the cosmic mysteries and the immediate judgment coming through the flood, God showed Enoch a vision that would span all of human history from the very beginning to the final restoration of all things. This wasn't just prophecy. It was divine history told through symbols that would help future generations understand God's plan. Chapter 85, verse 1 of Enoch begins this remarkable vision. And after this I saw another dream, and I will show the whole dream to thee, my son. What Enoch was about to witness would cover thousands of years of human history, from Adam to the coming of the Messiah and beyond. The vision began with the first man. Verse 2 describes the opening scene. And I looked till I saw a white bull which came forth upon the earth, and after it came forth a heifer, and along with this last came forth two bulls, one of them black, and the other red. Adam appeared as a white bull, pure and perfect as God had created him. Eve was the heifer who came after him, and their first two sons were the bulls that followed, Abel represented by the red bull, and Cain by the black one. Even in symbolic form, the tragedy of the first murder was evident in the colors God chose for this vision. The story continued through the generations. Chapter 85, verse 3 shows what happened next. And that black bull gored the red one, and pursued him over the earth, and thereupon I could no longer see that red one. Cain's murder of Abel was the beginning of violence that would plague humanity throughout history. As the vision progressed, Enoch saw the multiplication of humanity represented by various animals. Chapter 86, verse 1, reveals a crucial transition. And again I saw with mine eyes as I slept, and I saw the heaven above. And behold, a star fell from heaven, and it arose and ate and pastured amongst those oxen. This was the first fallen angel beginning to corrupt humanity. The star was joined by others, and their influence spread rapidly. Verse 2 continues, And after that I saw the large and the black oxen, and behold, they all changed their stalls and pastures and their cattle, and began to live with each other. The corruption introduced by the Watchers was changing the very nature of human society. The giants appeared in the vision as great elephants, camels, and asses. Chapter 86, verse 4 describes their impact. And they began to bite those oxen, and to devour them. The Nephilim were literally consuming humanity, just as Enoch had witnessed in his earlier visions. But God's judgment came swiftly. Verse 6 shows the divine response, "And I saw till a sword was given to the sheep, and the sheep proceeded against all the beasts of the field to slay them, and all the beasts and the birds of the heaven fled before their face." The flood would destroy these corrupted beings. As the vision of history continued, Enoch saw how God would work through chosen individuals to guide and protect his people. But one figure stood out above all others, a special shepherd who would come to restore everything that had been lost. Chapter 89, verse 1, shows the continuation of the symbolic history. "And one of those four went to that white bull and instructed him in a secret without his being terrified. He was born a bull and became a man, and built for himself a large vessel and dwelt thereon." This was Noah, chosen to preserve humanity through the flood. The white bull represented the righteous line that God would preserve through all generations. Chapter 89, verse 9 describes what happened after the flood. "And I saw till that man, who wrote down the names of the shepherds and carried up into the presence of the Lord of the sheep, came down and called those sheep from their number, and took them before the Lord of the sheep." Moses was the man who would lead God's people out of bondage, but the vision pointed towards someone far greater than any shepherd who had come before. Chapter 90, verse 37 reveals the appearance of this special figure. "And I saw that a white bull was born, with large horns, and all the beasts of the field and all the fowls of the air feared him and made petition to him all the time." This wasn't just another leader, this was the promised Messiah. The white bull with large horns represented power and purity combined in one person. Unlike all previous shepherds who had been merely human, this one possessed divine authority that even the wildest beasts would recognize and submit to willingly. Chapter 90, verse 38 shows the universal impact of this shepherd's coming. "And I saw till all their generations were transformed, and they all became white bulls. And the first among them became a lamb, and that lamb became a great animal and had great black horns on its head." The Messiah would transform not just individuals, but entire nations. The transformation wasn't temporary or partial. Verse 38 continues to show how complete this change would be. "And the Lord of the sheep rejoiced over it and over all the oxen." God himself would be pleased with what this special shepherd accomplished among his people. This wasn't just about spiritual leadership. The vision showed that this coming shepherd would establish a kingdom that would never end. The white bull represented not just a person, but a dynasty that would restore God's original plan for creation itself. The other shepherds in history had failed in various ways, but this one would succeed completely. Where others had led people astray or abandoned their flocks, this shepherd would gather all the scattered sheep and bring them safely home to God. In the most spectacular part of his prophetic visions, Enoch was shown the true identity and cosmic role of the coming Messiah. This wasn't just another human leader, but someone whose nature and authority would surpass anything the world had ever seen. Chapter 46, verse 1 describes the beginning of this revelation. "And there I saw one who had a head of days, and his head was white like wool, and with him was another being, whose countenance had the appearance of a man, and his face was full of graciousness, like one of the holy angels." Enoch was witnessing the Ancient of Days with the Son of Man. The identity of this figure became clear in the next verse. Chapter 46, verse 2 reveals, "And I asked the angel who went with me and showed me all the hidden things concerning that Son of Man, who he was, and whence he was, and why he went with the head of days." This wasn't just curiosity. Enoch was seeing the fulfillment of all prophecy. The angel's answer was astounding. Verse 3 declares, "And he answered and said unto me, This is the Son of Man who hath righteousness, with whom dwelleth righteousness, and who revealeth all the treasures of that which is hidden, because the Lord of spirits hath chosen him." This figure possessed perfect righteousness and unlimited authority, but his role extended far beyond moral perfection. Chapter 46, verse 4, shows his judicial function. "And this Son of Man, whom thou hast seen, shall raise up the kings and the mighty from their seats, and the strong from their thrones, and shall loosen the reins of the strong, and break the teeth of the sinners. He would judge all earthly powers." The Son of Man's authority wasn't limited to earth. Chapter 48, verse 2 reveals the cosmic scope of his rule. "And at that hour that Son of Man was named in the presence of the Lord of spirits, and his name before the head of days." His authority was established before creation itself began. Even before the world was made, this figure had been chosen for his ultimate mission. Verse 3 continues, "Yea, before the sun and the signs were created, before the stars of the heaven were made, his name was named before the Lord of spirits." The plan of salvation was older than creation itself. The revelation of his pre-existence was overwhelming. Chapter 48, verse 6 declares, "And for this reason hath he been chosen and hidden before him, before the creation of the world, and for evermore." The Son of Man wasn't an afterthought, but the centerpiece of God's eternal plan. His coming would change everything for both the righteous and the wicked. The righteous would find in him their ultimate hope and salvation, while the wicked would discover that no earthly power could protect them from his righteous judgment. Through his prophetic visions, Enoch saw not just the coming of the Messiah, but the ultimate destiny of all who had remained faithful to God throughout history. Death would not have the final word over the righteous. Chapter 51, verse 1 reveals this glorious promise. "And in those days shall the earth also give back that which has been entrusted to it, and Sheol also shall give back that which it has received, and hell shall give back that which it owes." Every place where the dead rested would surrender them for God's final accounting. This wasn't a general resurrection where everyone received the same fate. Verse 2 shows the distinction. "And he shall choose the righteous and holy from among them, for the day has drawn nigh that they should be saved." God would carefully separate those who belonged to him from those who had rejected him. The transformation awaiting the righteous was beyond human imagination. Chapter 51, verse 4 describes their new condition. "And the elect shall begin to dwell with the elect, and those are the measures which shall be given to faith, and which shall strengthen righteousness." They would live in perfect community with others who had also chosen God. Their bodies would be completely changed from what they had known in earthly life. Verse 4 continues, "And in those days the mountains shall leap like rams, and the hills shall skip like lambs satisfied with milk, and the faces of all the angels in heaven shall be lighted up with joy." Even creation itself would celebrate their resurrection, but the resurrection wasn't just about individual transformation. Chapter 51, verse 5 shows the cosmic scope. "Because the elect one has appeared before the Lord of spirits, and his glory is forever and ever, and his might unto all generations." The presence of the elect one would make this transformation possible. The righteous, who had suffered persecution and death for their faith, would be especially honored. Chapter 47, verse 1 promises, "And in those days shall have ascended the prayer of the righteous and the blood of the righteous from the earth before the Lord of spirits." Their suffering had not been forgotten. Justice would finally be complete. Verse 2 continues, "In those days the holy ones who dwell above in the heavens shall unite with one voice, and supplicate and pray and praise, and give thanks and bless." The name of the Lord of spirits, on behalf of the blood of the righteous, which has been shed. Heaven itself would vindicate the faithful. The contrast between their former suffering and future glory would be absolute. Where they had once been despised and persecuted, they would now reign with the Son of Man in power and honor that would never end. The culmination of all history would be the great day when God would settle all accounts and establish his justice perfectly and permanently throughout creation. This wouldn't be arbitrary punishment, but the final vindication of divine righteousness. Chapter 45, verse 3, sets the scene for this ultimate judgment. And on that day, mine elect one shall sit on the throne of glory, and shall try their works, and their places of rest shall be innumerable. The Son of Man would serve as the divine judge with unlimited authority. No one would escape this final accounting. Chapter 46, verse 4, shows the scope of his judgment. And this Son of Man whom thou hast seen shall raise up the kings and the mighty from their seats, and the strong from their thrones, and shall loosen the reins of the strong, and break the teeth of the sinners. Earthly power would provide no protection. The judgment would be thorough and inescapable. Verse 5 continues, And he shall put down the kings from their thrones and kingdoms, because they do not extol and praise him, nor humbly acknowledge whence the kingdom was bestowed upon them. Every ruler would answer for how they had used their authority. The wicked would face terrors beyond imagination. Chapter 48, verse 8 describes their fate, and they shall be downcast of countenance, and pain shall seize them when they see that Son of Man sitting on the throne of his glory. The very sight of perfect righteousness would torment those who had chosen evil, but this judgment wasn't vindictive. It was necessary for justice to be complete. Chapter 48, verse 9 explains, And the kings and the mighty and all who possess the earth shall bless and glorify and extol him who rules over all, who was hidden. Even the condemned would acknowledge the righteousness of their judge. The process would be absolutely fair and based on perfect knowledge. Chapter 49, verse 4 shows the standard. And he shall judge the secret things, and none shall be able to utter a lying word before him. For he is that Son of Man who hath seen righteousness, and with righteousness dwelleth righteousness. Nothing would be hidden from his perfect understanding. The righteous would witness this judgment with joy rather than fear. They would finally see God's justice vindicated and their own suffering avenged in a way that would satisfy their deepest longing for righteousness to triumph over evil. This wouldn't be the end, but the beginning of an eternal age where justice would reign supreme and evil would never again corrupt God's creation. After the final judgment cleansed creation of all evil, Enoch saw the establishment of God's eternal kingdom, a place where the righteous would dwell forever in perfect peace and joy. Chapter 53, verse 6 begins to describe this glorious future. And after this, the righteous and elect one shall cause the house of his congregation to appear. Henceforth they shall be no more hindered in the name of the Lord of spirits. God's people would finally have an eternal home where nothing could threaten or disturb them. This wasn't just a restored earth, but something entirely new and better than anything that had existed before. The New Jerusalem would be the capital of a kingdom that would never end, where God himself would dwell among his people in ways that surpassed even the Garden of Eden. Chapter 45, verse 4 shows the eternal nature of this kingdom. And their places of rest shall be innumerable, and their souls shall grow strong within them when they see mine elect one, and those who have called upon my glorious name. The presence of the Messiah would be their constant source of strength and joy. The city itself would be beyond human description in its beauty and glory. Every street would reflect God's perfection. Every building would demonstrate his wisdom, and every gathering place would resonate with the worship of perfectly redeemed people. Chapter 45, verse 5 reveals the transformation of the redeemed. Then will I cause mine elect one to dwell among them, and I will transform the heaven and make it an eternal blessing and light. Not only would they live in this perfect city, but they themselves would be transformed to match its glory. The presence of God would be immediate and personal rather than distant and mediated. Chapter 45, verse 6 promises, "And I will transform the earth and make it a blessing, and I will cause mine elect ones to dwell upon it, but the sinners and evildoers shall not set foot thereon." Evil would be permanently excluded from this new creation. Peace would reign absolutely, with no possibility of war, crime, or conflict of any kind. The lion would lie down with the lamb, not just symbolically, but literally, as all creation would be transformed to reflect the character of its creator. Time itself would take on new meaning when there was no death, aging, or decay to mark its passing. The residents of the New Jerusalem would experience eternal life, not just as endless duration, but as perfect quality of existence that never diminished or grew stale. As Enoch's incredible journey of revelation drew to its close, God showed him the ultimate rewards that awaited those who had remained faithful through all the trials and tribulations of earthly life. Chapter 58, verse 3 describes the condition of the blessed. "And the righteous shall be in the light of the sun, and the elect in the light of eternal life. The days of their life shall be unending, and the days of the holy without number." Their joy would be as limitless as their life. The contrast with their former suffering would be absolute and permanent. Where they had once faced persecution, mockery, and death for their faith, they would now experience honor, glory, and eternal life in the presence of God Himself. Chapter 58, verse 4 shows the reversal of earthly fortunes. "And they shall seek to reduce the days of their life, that they may not find grace, and they shall cry unto the hills, Fall on us, and hide us from the face of the elect one, and from the face of his glory." The wicked would desperately seek escape from the very presence that brought joy to the righteous. But for the faithful, every promise God had ever made would be fulfilled beyond their wildest dreams. Chapter 58, verse 5 declares, "And in those days blessed are they to whom the word of wisdom is delivered. They shall know and observe the ways of the Most High, and walk in the path of His righteousness, and become blessed with the blessed." Wisdom would be their eternal possession. The angels themselves would rejoice at the vindication of God's faithful people. Chapter 61, verse 12 shows their celebration. "And the sum of judgment was given unto the Son of Man, and He caused the sinners to pass away and be destroyed from off the face of the earth, and those who have led the world astray." Justice would finally be complete. The righteous would inherit not just eternal life, but active participation in God's eternal kingdom. They wouldn't be passive recipients of blessing, but would serve alongside the angels in administering divine justice and mercy throughout the endless ages to come. Chapter 62, verse 14 reveals their exalted position, "And the Lord of spirits will abide over them. And with that Son of Man shall they eat and lie down and rise up forever and ever." They would share in the very life of God Himself. Their joy would be not just personal, but corporate, as they celebrated together the goodness and faithfulness of the God who had brought them through every trial to this glorious destination. As God's revelations to Enoch reached their conclusion, the faithful patriarch received final instructions about preserving and transmitting these crucial truths to future generations who would need them in the dark days ahead. Chapter 82, verse 1 records Enoch's commission to his son. "And now, my son Methuselah, I will show thee all my visions which I have seen, recounting them before thee." These weren't just personal experiences, but divine revelations meant for all humanity. The importance of preserving this knowledge couldn't be overstated. Verse 2 continues, "Two visions I saw before I took a wife, and the one was quite unlike the other. The first when I was learning to write, the second before I took thy mother, when I saw a terrible vision. From his youth to his final days, God had been preparing Enoch for this prophetic ministry. These revelations weren't meant to remain secret, but to be shared with those who would follow." Chapter 82, verse 3 shows the scope of their intended audience. "And now I say unto thee, my son, and show unto thee that I have seen, and I will recite before thee the words of righteousness." Truth was meant to be passed from generation to generation. The timing of these revelations was crucial. They would be needed most when the world grew darkest and people began to forget God's ways. Chapter 93, verse 10 reveals one purpose. "And after this, in the 10th week in the 7th part, there shall be the great eternal judgment, in which he will execute vengeance amongst the angels." Future generations would need to understand God's timeline. Enoch's writings would serve as a witness against those who rejected God's truth. Chapter 94, verse 5 warns, "And now I know this mystery, that sinners will alter and pervert the words of righteousness in many ways, and will speak wicked words and lie, and practice great deceits, and write books concerning their words." False teaching would multiply, making true revelation even more precious, but the faithful would find strength and hope in these ancient prophecies. Chapter 96, verse 3 promises, "And ye righteous, fear not the sinners, for again will the Lord deliver them into your hands, that ye may execute judgment upon them according to your desires." God's people would ultimately triumph. The legacy of Enoch's prophetic ministry extended far beyond his own time. His faithfulness in recording and preserving divine revelation would provide hope and guidance for the righteous in every generation until the final fulfillment of all God's promises. Through his obedience to God's calling, Enoch became not just a witness to divine truth, but a bridge connecting the earliest days of human history with the ultimate consummation of God's eternal plan for creation itself. You've just discovered one of the most extraordinary books ever written, a text so powerful that religious authorities felt compelled to remove it from the biblical canon. The Book of Enoch reveals truths about the spiritual realm, the origins of evil, and God's ultimate plan that most people never hear about in church. From the rebellion of the Watchers and their corruption of humanity, through Enoch's incredible journeys into heaven itself, to the final prophecies about the Messiah and the end of all things, this ancient book contains revelations that change everything we thought we knew about biblical history. But here's what's truly amazing. These aren't just ancient stories. The Book of Enoch speaks directly to our time, explaining the spiritual forces still at work in our world today, and giving us hope for the ultimate victory of good over evil. If this video opened your eyes to truths you've never heard before, don't keep this knowledge to yourself. Click that subscribe button right now so you won't miss our upcoming videos exploring more hidden biblical mysteries. And here's something really important. Share this video with your family and friends. They deserve to know these truths too. The religious establishment may have tried to hide the Book of Enoch, but in our digital age, these ancient revelations can reach millions of people hungry for spiritual truth. By sharing this video, you're helping spread knowledge that could transform someone's understanding of God's plan. Hit that like button if this content blessed you. Subscribe for more biblical mysteries and share this video everywhere. The truth has been hidden long enough. It's time for God's people to wake up and understand the full scope of His amazing plan for humanity. Don't let this knowledge stop with you. Share it now, and let's spread these biblical truths together.